He is another victim of our ragtag of entrepreneurs. Hey, podcast listener, even if you are alone in your entrepreneurial pursuit, know that today, right now in your earbuds, you are joined by thousands of entrepreneurs all around the globe seeking to do the same thing you are. If you want to know more about this program or this podcast, or want to get barraged by a lot of annoying pop-ups, check out our website, lifestylebusinesspodcast.com. Yeah, buddy, it's Thursday morning. That means it's time for another Lifestyle Business Podcast. As many of you know, Ian and I have spent the last 2 weeks in the Philippines mentoring new startups and entrepreneurs, a lot of existing entrepreneurs as well, helping them to move their business to the next level, and it's been extraordinarily rewarding. We are exhausted and couldn't be happier at the way things have gone. You know, we had a lot of anxiety about this kind of thing, bringing people into our lives, and we're really promising a lot and asking for a lot of money and doing a big thing, and it could not have been more rewarding. And I want to say that just if there's anything in your life, that you could do and is an opportunity, but you're worried about maybe taking on too much responsibility, or maybe you're anxious about how things are going to play out, even if you do fail, because Ian and I didn't do everything right these last 2 weeks. Even if you do fail, like my buddy Brian Polk, who attended the event the last 2 weeks, said, you're going to fail forward by getting our fingers dirty, by getting gritty and inviting people out here and really trying to go for it and trying to deliver for them. I feel like hopefully we've helped change their lives, but we've definitely changed our lives as well. So I couldn't be happier. I had a pretty treacherous trip here to Manila, and I'm sure Ian did as well. He's on an airplane now, I hope safe and sound. I splashed it out on an amazing hotel room with a view of the whole of Manila. Don't tell him I did that. But I'm going to decompress here tonight. And why am I even talking? If you guys don't know, we've been on the Summer Marketing Mashup the last 4 weeks, an amazing panel of podcasts, some of my favorites. The original Gangsters Internet Business Mastery set it up, and I'm honored to have been highlighted by them as a podcast worthy of being a part of this event. Today we're going to talk about, along with Pat from Smart Passive Income, of course Tim Conley from foolishadventure.com, we're going to talk about how to select a niche. That's important for people just getting started out, and that's important for guys like Ian and myself who've been in the game. We've been through 50 niches in 5 years, and we're still looking to improve our process and our mindset about identifying those hot new pivots or niches which to bring our expertise and our team and to attack. So I hope you guys find this panel discussion as fun and as informative as I did. I had a blast, and I hope you do too. See you next Thursday with our regular programming. All right, everybody, welcome to the Summer Marketing Mashup Lifestyle Business Podcast edition. I hope that means there'll be a few yeah buddies sprinkled in here and there, but hopefully you've listened to the previous editions over at Smart Passive Income, Internet Business Mastery, and the Foolish Adventure Show. Ian and I are currently in a little bit of a precarious situation here in the Philippines. It's been flooding, so we are going to hand off the MC duties for this show over to Jason from Internet Business Mastery. But today we're going to get kicked off about one of the biggest pain points for new and established entrepreneurs alike, which is what is that niche you're going to get started with, or what is the next niche that you're going to launch in your business. So today we're going to share the best tips across our panel, and at the end we are going to answer your live questions on the call. So if you're not on the call, if you are on the call, you please tweet out that you are on, or share it on Facebook so that as many people as possible can join us today. All right, Jason, I'm going to toss it over to you before my internet connection just goes kaput, man.
Nice. All right, so the topic of this evening is how to choose a profitable business niche that you will love. So let's go ahead and start off with Mr. Pat Flynn of Smart Passive Income. How you doing there, Pat?
Doing excellent, thank you.
Awesome. So, hey, what's your best tip for everyone listening about how to choose that niche? This is one of the biggest questions everyone asks. It's like that big sticking point right at the beginning. What's my niche going to be? It feels like the weight of the world. I want to pick the right one. What do you tell them?
Yeah, well, I have a sort of system. I mean, it's not perfect, but I've done it before, and I've done it publicly on Smart Passive Income. It's actually how I selected my niche for my security guard training niche site. And the reason I'm selecting this one is to show that, you don't have to necessarily start with something you're completely passionate about, or, what you through your research, you might end up with something that might not be initially what you thought of, but it would be something that you would still have enough interest in to keep you going. And as long as that passion is there for business, or that passion is there for solving people's problems, then you can make your way through. Again, you don't need to necessarily be passionate about I'm not passionate about security guard training, but I'm passionate about building a website to help people become a security guard. Now, how did I land on that? Well, I have the system. I kind of learned it from Glenn Alsop from viperchill.com, and I kind of tweaked it to be a little bit more memorable. I call it the 777 system. The reason why I just picked that number, it's an arbitrary number, but like a jackpot at the casino. So what you do is, or this is what I did, is I pick 7 passions, 7 problems, and 7 fears that I have, and I write them down, 3 columns, 7 each, passions, problems, and fears. And the reason why those are important is because if you have a passion for something, it's obviously something that someone else might have a passion for, and you can probably create a site for. 7 problems, same thing. If especially problems and fears, people are willing to learn as much as they can and potentially spend a lot of money to solve their problems or overcome those fears that they have. So once you write those down, then that's when I start to do research on each and every one of those things, and start, with the security guard site, it was strictly keyword research. Keyword research being finding keywords that related to that industry and finding keywords that were highly searched for that had low competition. And I use tools like Market Samurai. You could just use for free the Google AdWords keyword tool to do that too, and just basic Google searches. But a tool like Market Samurai, and there's other ones like Longtail Pro out there that'll do that much faster for you. And that's how I landed from, it was actually police training, which is something that my mom was interested in. And I was kind of passionate about following her in her career. That pointed me to security guard training as a keyword to build the website for, because security guard training had a lot of searches and had low competition. Now, the keyword aspect of it is just one component of the actual research of these particular topics. Another important aspect is competition, and not just competition in Google, but just competition as far as what's already out there talking about that topic. Because if you research your quote competitors or potential partners that you could partner up with, if you do get into that niche, you can see what's out there already. You can see what's working. You can see what's not working, and if there are any holes in that particular market that you can enter and kind of bring a unique angle to, so to fulfill the customers or the audience's need. I would also check to see what books there are on Amazon talking about that particular topic, and see if there's anything missing, see what people are liking, see what the reviews are on Amazon for those books. And if people have specific complaints and needs, I would go into forums and blogs and check to see what people really want to know about that particular topic, and see if I can somehow create a website that would kind of target those specific questions in some kind of congruent manner. And so that's kind of the just the 777 system. I've done it a number of times now to create a number of different websites on different topics, and really the seeing what else is out there already and what I can do to improve the user experience for those who are looking for information about that particular topic or subject, passion, problem, or fear. That's really what you can do. So that's it.
That's a great concise system, 777. I like that a lot. So here's a question for you, though. I think people get stuck on the idea of competition. You said, okay, these are potential partners. How do you know if there's too much competition or if there's opportunity in a market or not?
If there is competition out there and it seems like there's a lot of people talking about that topic already, that's a good sign, because that means there is a market out there for it already, and there are things you could do to kind of dissect what's out there and see where you can insert yourself. And it's not going to be that easy, especially if the market's saturated. But there are people out there who have recently entered really saturated markets and who are killing it. One example is Ryan and Josh from the minimalists.com. In just a year, they just took something they were passionate about, which was, just minimalism and kind of changing their lives from stuff filled to just happy filled. And, in a year, they've had over 100,000 subscribers. They wrote, I think, 3 books on Amazon, been featured on Wall Street Journal and New York Times, I think, and all these other sites. And the minimalist market is huge, but they brought a different angle to it, and they brought their own voice, which seemed to resonate with people. And, they were obviously doing it in a true and honest way, not to make money, but as a result, they made some good money because people trusted them and saw that they were different from everyone else that was out there.
Point worth underlining, Pat, if I can butt in here. I mean, by the way, that was one of my favorite interviews on your podcast. It was really inspiring to me to hear those guys. And I do think, when you look out at a niche like that, we were talking to John McIntyre last night, who's in the copywriting niche, saying, there's, all kinds of people in the copywriting niche. Well, that's a great canary in the coal mine. It means there's a lot of people making a living off of copywriting. So if you can do what Pat said and take your unique angle, what your unique value proposition is to a moneyed niche, I think that that's a great combination. So take a unique approach to a niche that a lot of people are making money in, and that's a good formula for niche success.
Yeah, it was Jack Bourne who said, great marketer, Jack Bourne, he has this really great quote that I want everyone to think about when it comes to getting into a niche, especially if it's one that there's competition out there already. What is your unfair advantage? Think about what you have that not anyone else has. And one example was I had another interview with a woman named Lane Amen on my podcast who got into the scrapbooking industry, and she's making 6 figures from scrapbooking. So when all this talk about macrame and stuff, yeah, it could really happen. But she used her unfair advantage, which was her connections with the scrapbooking industry, because she used to write for a scrapbooking journal or a magazine. And so her unfair advantage was the connections she had. So she was able to get people into a webinar, kind of like an online summit, and people would pay X $100 for access to all these great writers and kind of well-known people in the industry to have them teach them how to do certain stuff in scrapbooking. So unfair advantage.
Sweet. So I just got to figure out what my unfair advantage is in macrame, and my true dream will be realized. I like it. Thank you very much for those insights, Pat. That's good stuff. Well, while we still clearly have you on the line, Dan and Ian, let's go ahead and throw over to you in Asia. And before you have to hop in your canoe and float down the streets that are filling up there, what is your top niche choosing tip that you have for the audience?
All right, guys, let me toss it over to my unfair advantage, sitting right next to me here.
No.
Nice.
So
Sweet.
My tip here in terms of finding a niche is maybe a little bit different than what Pat described, but it does have a lot of similarities, especially the finding your unfair advantage. But my suggestion is to focus on skills, not interests. So I think a lot of times like my interests are like the shiny objects, and I try to shy away from those, and I try to focus on skills either that I built in the past or that I want to build in the future. So when I look at a niche, and we're telling all the guys here that we're working with this week, it's like, what do you want to be involved in the next like 2 to 5 years? Because it's really like a long haul approach. And this is something that you're going to be working at for a long time. So that's why I focus on skills, because it takes a long time to build skills, and they're hard to come by too. So I focus less these days on the keyword research, and I focus more on like who's an authority in the space, who's putting out good quality content and products. What is it going to look like when I start putting out good content and quality products? And how's my competition going to be? Not so much with the keyword research, but with the actual products and with the content.
That's an interesting approach that I actually never articulated before, but we'll actually like look at the industry leaders and be like, all right, if we were like right next to them, if we were on the stage at the conference, how would our approach be different? Like, would we be able to have a better product? So that's sort of a different approach that doesn't get talked about online very often. Oftentimes, especially in smaller niches, you have to be the leader in the niche in order to make these 6-figure incomes that we're talking about. So imagine yourself on that macrame international convention stage and ask yourself, could you bring something unique to the table there?
Yeah, I really like the example of the macrame woman, because she's building on something that she's done, probably a good portion of her life. And the same with me. I mean, some of the niches that we're into right now, I've cultivated throughout my life, and I've just started to build those skills in a business. So they're things that I was already an expert on, and that made it much more easy to monetize than, say, starting from scratch. So I really resist the gamer's mentality of niche selection, and I go more towards the builder's mentality of building out a skill set.
I'm assuming you guys can still hear us.
Yeah.
Yep.
Does macrame mean scrapbooking? Is that what that means?
Let me
jump in here. Let me jump here and defend Lane. She's a sometimes host of the Foolish Adventure Show, and she has a scrapbooking site. Macrame is a different kind of craft. She might do macrame as a fun hobby thing, but no, she's in the scrapbooking industry.
All right, so my quick tip is similar to Ian's. We've been sort of trying to deconstruct what we've done over the last 5 years, and we feel like we have a similar approach to a lot of our niches, but sometimes we fail big time. Sometimes it's just very mediocre, and sometimes it goes really well. So the one thing that's sort of common across all of our niches is that we're focused on finding work that we love rather than topics that we're interested in. And so it's about being in love with that process of building businesses or developing industrial design products, which is what one of our companies does. On the publishing side of our business, where we have podcasts that help entrepreneurs, it doesn't really matter whether we're writing a podcast about outsourcing to the Philippines or SEO. It's really about the work of publishing online and helping entrepreneurs that we fell in love with, not the particular topic. So I think if you can sort of pin yourself down and find what work you like to do every day on a consistent basis, that's a more sustainable strategy than saying, oh, I really like dogs, or I really like, reptile cultivation, or I really like paleo diet. If your approach is going to be like, I love writing and researching, I love coaching and teaching, I love hosting conferences, or I love building products. I think that's a more sustainable approach to niche selection because, Ian and I have, in one way or another, probably been involved in like 45 niches in the last 5 years.
Right.
Seriously, probably in 10 niches. And how many are good right now? 4?
Maybe 4.
Maybe 4. Maybe. That's very liberal. So yeah, that would be my advice.
Yeah, I like that a lot. We're giving people a lot of options here because I think people do get really stuck on the topic thing. I have to pick that right search phrase, that right keyword that has a certain amount of numbers in Google. Whereas we've thrown out unfair advantage, we've thrown out pick a topic, we've thrown out look at your skills. And a couple books that have really helped me in this process are StrengthsFinder, which has an assessment that you take with it. You can grab StrengthsFinder 2.0 for, I don't know, like $13 on Amazon and go take that. And it gives you more of a global, high-level view of what kinds of situations you thrive in and the kinds of people that you would work well with. And another book that really, really helped me as well was Unique Ability, which is based on the teachings by one of our coaches in the past, Dan Sullivan. And he helps you kind of identify what is that common thread that you can take to different businesses, different topics, but that you're going to thrive when you do that. I happen to know that I'm in an element of thriving where my energy is up, where I feel like I really have something to bring to the table when I am teaching and sharing knowledge and resources to help other people enjoy higher levels of freedom, fulfillment, and purpose. I just happen to do that for entrepreneurs right now through Internet Business Mastery. But I could probably be just as fulfilled. I don't know that I wouldn't make nearly as much money being a professor at a college, just to illustrate, there's lots of different ways I can apply those skills in different businesses, different topics, or even for different audiences as well. So I kind of like this, approach or framework because people really do get, stuck on, it's topic, it's about keyword. It's about a certain keyword, which is, I guess, a good segue for me to go ahead and throw in, which is my tip. And that is, I'll throw in that idea of audience. I feel like and I've been through a heck of a lot of internet business, internet marketing related courses. And just without fail, all of them have pretty much the same process that they tell you to go through. Go to the Google AdWords keyword tool and start typing a bunch of things in. Maybe use a site like eHow or 43 Things or 42 Things, whatever it is, to get ideas. And those are solid tools and resources, and we recommend those as well. However, what you end up with is this whole list of keywords and titles, but I think when it comes to standing out in the unfair advantage and your passions and who you can really help, those things get missed. And so no matter what, whichever these approaches you're taking to choosing a niche, I'd absolutely sit down and think of, well, who is and the word we use is avatar. Who is that ideal prospect, that ideal customer, that ideal person that I feel like I could do my best work with? And I love the book, Book Yourself Solid. And in there, he talks about the velvet rope policy. The velvet rope's that exclusive thing that keeps, they only let certain people through into the club at night. They got an idea of who their clientele is, and they're not afraid of just putting that rope across and going, sorry, you're not getting in. And as business people, it's so tempting to go, well, my audience is everybody. I want to help everybody.
The kiss of death.
And that's, that's a kiss. And I asked that question, every time I hear somebody say, hey, I've got this idea, I let them, expound on their idea. And then usually my very first question is, okay, well, who's your audience? Who is it you want to reach? Who are you passionate about helping? And if their answer is everybody, or they look at me and pause and are kind of quizzical about what I'm asking, then I know, it's like, okay, well, here's something critical you got to do. You got to go find that avatar and sit down with that person. It's probably somebody you know, or possibly a past version of yourself. And you need to talk to that person, listen to their pains, listen to the things that they want to, what are they irrationally passionate about? What do they urgently have a pain that needs to be fixed when it comes to those things? And then you'll be able to inform those decisions a lot better of, well, what kind of content should I create? What kind of solution should I offer? What kind of product do I need to bring to the market? What is my unfair advantage? Because maybe I've had experiences in the past that could really help that kind of person in a way that other people can't, because nobody else has had those same experiences that I have. And so when you define that avatar really well and get in touch with them, everything flows a lot easier and more easily. The ideas come more easily, the content comes more easily, but most of all, you stand out in the marketplace, because when that avatar shows up and sees what you're offering, they go, okay, bam, I have found the solution for me. This person, it's like they understand my pain, they've got it. Or, hey, I found a place to belong, and they stick around and want to be a part of it. They want to connect with you. They want to, they want more. And then eventually they want to buy what it is that you're selling. So that avatar, the idea of audience, would be my big tip, because I think it gets left out of the equation quite a bit. All right, so that would be, I guess, a good time to throw over to my cohort, Jeremy. What would you add to the idea of choosing a profitable niche that you will love?
Well, it actually kind of ties into the audience thing, and that is just, once you're looking at an audience, you want to absolutely make sure that that audience is actively looking for a solution. Because as much as people might really enjoy the crafting of knitting or, making macrame pants, if they don't actually have, what you mentioned before, an irrational passion or an urgent pain that can be solved, that you can put out a solution for, it makes the niche that you're looking for much, much harder. And basically, when people talk to me about niches, I do the same thing as you. I'm listening, and, about 90% of the time, everyone is their audience. Even if it was somebody that's an expert at macrame pants, they suddenly think that, a businessman who might be a lawyer is totally interested in their product. And that's just, kind of like not yet understanding the audience. But the other thing is, with that irrational passion or urgent pain, being able to offer that solution is going to be really the key for making that niche profitable. And sometimes, we talk a lot about, being very passionate about, what business you go into. We're, more on the become the expert side and be passionate about being the expert of this one thing. But no matter how passionate you are, again, if there is not a solution you can solve for them that people will be willing to pay you to solve, then it almost doesn't matter how passionate you are. You can be, again, if somebody's absolutely into golf, and they're completely irrational about golf, and if you can help them take off a couple of swings off their, golf swing or whatever, however golf works, you can tell I have no clue. I do frisbee golf, that's about it. But and in frisbee golf, you don't really care. You're just there to walk around and talk. But as far as like if they have that irrational passion, they will be very willing for you to take off, be able to teach them to take off a couple of points. Or obviously, if they have an urgent pain, like, maybe their marriage is on the rocks and you can give them some sort of solution to that. Or, they're a mother that just found out that they've got to be on bed rest, and how do they work their whole life? They've got other kids, they've got their whole life to do. How, if you can solve that for them, that's going to very much help guarantee that niche that you're picking is going to be, very profitable for you as well as fulfilling.
I would like to double down on, I love this idea of focusing on an audience. The other day we framed it up to our students as an audience is one of sort of the safest and most profitable assets to build when it comes to business. So, you could build a product, you could build an audience, and really like SEO keyword research is really just sort of an easy entry way of building an audience. It's one distribution path for your message. So I think I'm really in agreement that you need to move past keyword research as soon as possible. That's like if you're FedEx Kinko's, it's one retail outlet, like one little store on one corner of a street. But that's not your whole message, and that's not your whole audience. And I really agree that focusing on a buying audience and developing them, that's one of the most powerful and secure ways to start a business.
I know a lot of times too, when we're first starting businesses, it's like very inner focused. But also, I think one of the best things we can do is pull our audience or pull our market, start a conversation with them. This goes with your point too. It's like, what does the market need? Am I solving my own problem or am I solving the market's problem?
Right. And that's exactly what the whole passion question often forces us to do, is try to solve our own problems. Well, that's not why we're in business. We're in business to be servants to our marketplace. So, we obviously want to have more fulfilling lives and do things that we're passionate about. But we got to be careful that doesn't lead us astray to start just solving all our own problems all the time.
Absolutely.
And not going out there and helping anybody else.
Well, it's funny, when we first, one of our first products, when we built a membership site, we came up with this survey that we were going to give everybody that was all based on basically what we wanted to create for them. And, we basically said, rank it, and then, give us other things that might not be on that list that you want more. And all the stuff that we thought was going to be the absolute biggest thing, mostly because we just thought it would be fun to do, were ranked the lowest. And so we had to tailor that and go, wow, I'm so glad we knew to survey and find out what that actually, what they actually wanted the solution for, which is obviously another tip. But it, helped us create the exact solution for our audience. And it almost seems magical. It's like, all we did is ask, and then we make this magical solution that, of course, they're going to buy because we made it exactly the way they wanted it.
Gary V a while back, he said something that I think threw a lot of people off. He said something like, "Follow your passion. You can monetize your passion, even if it's Smurfs or something like that." But then you look at Gary V, and he's still in the wine business. So I mean, the point there is that Gary V followed his passion in building operations and things like that. But he had a lot of legacy in the wine business, and he followed up on that. So I don't think that Gary Vee necessarily follows his own advice.
Calling out the experts. I love it.
Yeah, taking a hit at Gary Vee, man. That's just a swipe shot. All right, it's your podcast. You can do what you want.
Well, and it's so much easier to say follow your passion if you happen to have a passion that's in an incredibly, easy to monetize niche, but being able to understand some of these other, strategies, will absolutely help you if you don't happen to have a wine business for you already.
Well, I'll tell you what, Jeremy, like our business is a great example of that. Lifestyle Business Podcast listeners will know that Ian started with this shiny piece of cat furniture that we thought was the bomb. And like he had been developing it all through college, and we were like, oh, this is going to change the industry of cat furniture. It's sort of similar to like the yoga mat story from your buddy. Yeah. And we launched it in the market, and we just like sat there and waited, and just crickets, man. Just nobody wanted this thing. And when we started doing business to business projects like our portable bar company and our keybox company, those were real problems that people had. Like they needed that stuff. And all of a sudden, we started to become successful. So, I mean, that was another example of you don't have to have a blog or a podcast to pull your audience. Every business has an audience, and you ought to be interacting with them and figuring out what it is that they need.
So does that mean that Tim Ferriss doesn't work a 4-hour work week?
As we all know.
Just wondering.
What are you saying here?
Yeah. For business, right?
You're going after everyone. Yeah. Just call out the big dogs.
Who else?
Where is this podcast hosted?
Call us, Tim. Call us.
This is going lifestyle business podcast, man. We can talk whatever trash we want. Anything. It's their problem to go with. Comments are going on their site. All right. Well, that brings us to Tim Conley. And before I throw it to him, we just want to tell you this is a great time to start queuing up questions if you got them about how to choose a niche, because right after Tim, we'll be answering your questions. So you've got the webinar interface. There should be a question box right then. Go ahead and just type it right in there. And in the order they come in, we'll start serving those babies up and giving you answers. All right, Tim, what do you got?
Okay, I'm actually not going to talk about finding a niche, because I realized something in this past week. I was helping out a member, and she had this question about growing her business, and I took it to this really big level, to like saying she could make it into $1 million business. And she had never conceived of her small niche as being possible of building a business within it that would do $1 million a year. And then that got me thinking about the fact that in the last couple of years, I've been using the word niche all the time. And my background's as a marketing consultant, and for 12 years before starting a podcast in this internet marketing world, I didn't use the word niche. I used the words market and industry, because I looked at building about entering into markets that were sustainable, ones that were big enough to play a bigger game in. And then I started jumping into this world and giving this advice of go out and choose a niche. And then I realized that this word has overtaken my vocabulary, and it's preventing me from being able to really help people achieve a much bigger game than their by focusing on the word niche, keeping it small. In the beginning, I would always talk about, let's do a niche to find that specific spot that you could grow from. And I'd forgotten about that. And this is something, if you're someone listening and all you want is a small business, great, no problem. But if you really want to play a bigger game, then you need to start thinking about industries that you're going to play in, and not small niches. And that's the best advice I think I could give today, is that you shouldn't limit yourself to just something small.
You know, that brings to my mind, I like that a lot, of big thinking, and it's true that in the internet marketing world we can fall into that trap of just thinking smaller, because that is the way to stand out at first. But an example comes to my mind of, Nerd Fitness, Steve Cam, who found his spot in the market. In fact, he took 2 markets. So this is one way to think bigger, but at the same time find your place to stand out. He took the fitness market, incredibly huge, incredibly competitive, and like the gamer, nerd, geek market, also very broad. And he took the cross section of those 2. And honestly, if he'd come to me and been asking my opinion, I'd been like, interesting, not sure if it'll, because of course I've got that stigma of, well, the guy drinking Code Red playing World of Warcraft, he doesn't want to work out, isn't that the point? But look at the community. Like, I think he's tapped into an industry really well, and in fact, he's tapped into 2 industries, and he's clearly headed for big things, in my opinion. I think he's tearing it up. So, I don't know if that applies to the point you were, but that's kind of when you said what you said, that sparked that for me, and kind of how to combine this idea of have your advantage, have your edge, but think big at the same time.
Because he's not limited by just staying in that in this concept of a nerd fitness, because of the fact that he's in fitness. He can find ways of making that more mainstream, especially since now it's cool to be a nerd. It's cool to be a geek. A long time ago, that wasn't the case, but now it's really popular. And there is a nerd culture out there, and a geek culture that's actually moving to mainstream. And that's a way that he could move up further and further and be on television. He could be an international celebrity in the fitness world if he wished to move up, because he's in an industry as opposed to just in a niche.
Yeah, this is like thinking beyond the keyword and thinking beyond your particular product and value proposition, and just sort of asking yourself, what is it that your products help your customers achieve? And one way we do that is by writing mission statements for each of our brands. And that's a great rubric for deciding new product lines to get into within that company, because, if it's for our cat furniture business, I mean, it sounds cheesy, but we really do have a mission statement that's to help our customers have the coolest, most chic environments for their pets available. And if that means we have to get outside of the cat furniture game and start offering cat clothes or something, that might inspire us to think a little bit bigger. So that's one tactic we use is thinking beyond that keyword like cat furniture and starting thinking about what is it that we're empowering people to do. Cat furniture is a bad example. We gotta move past it.
Cat furniture is a great one because of the pet industry.
Pet industry, right?
There you go.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what about the ferret furniture? They need furniture too, right? I mean, endless possibilities.
Don't get them started, guys, please.
Lazy boy
just
for
ask
them.
Jeremy's daughter. Awesome. Good tips, everyone. So let's go ahead with the time we have left, the second half of this, and go and dive into people's questions. They're starting to pour in here, and we want to get to as many of these as we possibly can. And this first one, it's going to come to you, Pat. It goes back to your idea of an unfair advantage. And Carol is wondering, do you think everyone has an unfair advantage?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think so, but I don't think everyone has found it or believes they have it, and that's the problem. I think people kind of gravitate toward this sort of kind of negative look at where they're at when they're entering a new market. But I think you have to take a positive approach and know that you have one. You just have to find it or learn it or just find it or create it. You have to, I think everyone can has one or can make an unfair advantage in any particular industry that they want, to be honest.
And I think, whether that's that unfair, I agree that people have that unfair advantage within them and they just need to not undervalue it. And it's just going to take some time of being creative, maybe asking people around you to find it. But even if you're not somebody who finds that unfair advantage from within, I mean, here's an example of where we found the unfair advantage externally from us. We came into the internet business space. It's not like the internet business space needed another set of people talking about internet business, but nobody was using podcasting to do it when we started. And so we started a podcast. That was our unfair advantage when we got started. Now, of course, we've had to continue it and adapt because that's only going to last for so long. And so eventually you do have to, I think, go within and find that. But there's also, I think, external factors that you can bring to the table, whether it's lanes, connections, for instance, the type of channel that you're using to reach your audience, whatever the case may be. And, maybe you have super efficient systems. I mean, that's how FedEx broke in and changed everything. They came up with systems that nobody else, they just created an unfair advantage. And that's why they took over at the time. Now there's more people that have entered that market, so they've had to keep ahead. But, Apple does that time and time again.
Yeah, I just want to say about the language that we use. No one is born with an unfair advantage, so we don't have them. Unfair advantages are things that we either find because there's a hole in the marketplace, or we create by developing the skills necessary to take advantage of holes in the marketplace.
Interesting. So would you say Michael Jordan was not born with an unfair advantage for basketball?
No, he was not, because he got cut from his from the team. He didn't make the team. What was it? His freshman or sophomore year? And then
he even said that he didn't have an advantage. He just practiced more than everybody.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, agreed on that point. Yeah, I'm agreeing with you. Sorry, the internet's cutting out here, but I think Dana and I often bring up John Mayer. I think he would be wildly offended if you said that he had an unfair advantage from birth, given that he locked himself in a room for hours at a time practicing his guitar.
Right. Excellent point.
Well, and actually, one way that, we actually, when we first started, even with the podcast, there were a few, experts podcasting. And, one of the things we looked at was, I don't know that we thought of it as an unfair advantage at the time, but we just looked at what the other guys were doing and did it different. And what everybody was doing was talking like they were these huge experts, these gurus that, you could never talk to them directly. And, they were acting like that type of a person. So we came in, and what could have looked like a downside about us, where we were regular guys that had some internet businesses. We were making a full-time living. We weren't driving Ferraris with those guys, but we used that to our advantage, and people ended up enjoying that far more than somebody that was just preaching to them exactly how to do it. They didn't sound like they had ever failed. They sounded like these magic guys that, just were perfect every single time. And we went a different direction with it and just stayed true to kind of what we were really in general. And we'd talk about our failures, and we basically made being the new guy and being guys that weren't multimillionaires yet. And at the time, that's what we made into what became our kind of unfair advantage, in the way that ended up being what everybody would rather hear than just experts saying, this is the only way to do it. And, that's because I know that because I didn't fail. So that, we were kind of twisted it into, we just did the opposite of what other people were doing, and that ended up working out for us.
Yeah, that's kind of how I approach a lot of what I do. I see what everyone else is doing and try something different. Like my email list, I don't sell on my email list at all. I only provide content to it, and people love it. That's why I have a 70% open rate. Nobody was talking about how much money they were making. They were talking about making money online, but no one was actually sharing how much. So that's what I did, and that's why you see my income reports, and those have become the most popular posts on my site. So yeah, definitely, you can create your own unfair advantage by seeing what everyone else is doing, and just doing the opposite.
And we're dying for your list, believe us. The opposite of what everybody does. 70% open rates. Come on.
All right, Jeff asks, does it make sense to tackle a few ideas at the same time?
Well, we talk about very much focusing. That's just been, Jason and I are very big on that. We both made mistakes of trying to do 27 things at once at first, and it just completely diluted the process. I had in my mind, everybody says that 1 out of 10 businesses succeeds. 1 out of 10 businesses succeed. So I figured, well, I'll just make 10 businesses so I can at least have one make it. And it was incredibly painful because I'm working 12, 14-hour days, more than I ever did when I had a job, just to try and get all these businesses to work. And really what made this all work for me was focusing on one. Like once Jason and I went, okay, it's Internet Business Mastery. This is what we do together. We're going to put our time and effort into that. That's when, we went from, it's a cool little extra income for us to making 7 figures. I mean, it changed everything when we focus. So we're big on the focus.
Yeah, we didn't plan on it becoming a business because we had other things we were doing first. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Dan. Yeah.
We really push people to try to fail because, you have so few resources, especially if you're just getting started and you're starting a startup, especially if you're doing it on the side, you don't have any money or track record. You're just hamstringing yourself quite literally if you're trying to go for 2 or 3 niches. And the way this stuff develops is that you learn so much by going through a fail process that you're not actually starting from scratch your second time around. And I think it's maybe tough to visualize that at the beginning, but it's more like an iterative process. You take a few steps forward, you get knocked down, and then you keep stepping forward from that point with the resources, with the team, with the cash flow, with everything that you build up from that first niche. You can take that into your second niche. And that's what Ian and I have been doing. If you could imagine, it sort of looks like a tree. You sort of head out and then you start branching out as your business is basically an entity that gathers intelligence about marketplaces. So focus that on one marketplace, get as much intelligence as you can, and then start to branch off to where you see. So we definitely, same as you guys, if you're going to start 3 or 4 niches on the side when you don't have a business going, it's just like, man, that's just really hurting your chances at pushing something to a fail point, which is a success for a startup, because you're trying to push something to fail to see if it's going to be a success or not, or to a success point. So absolutely focus.
Yeah, I'm just going to third down that. And, a lot of people see what I do, and I have all these different things going on at the same time. iPhone apps, niche sites, the blog, writing a book, and all these things. But I'm working on each one of those things one at a time. And I'm at a point now in my business where a lot of those things are running automatically. Green Exam Academy only takes a couple hours a month. So that's working for me already. But when I first started, I was only working on that and that only for maybe 2 years before I started my second site. Starting that site even while I still had a job and I was just using it for notes. But all my focus was on that. So definitely I agree with Dan there. When you're first starting out, you really have to just focus on one thing to know that when you pick a topic and you put all your effort into it, that the failure was because of the topic, or just that topic didn't jive with you, not because you didn't put all the effort that you could have put into it.
All right. Here's a question. 2 or 3 people asking, a question along these lines, and that is, how do you know that you've chosen a niche that can be profitable, or how can you know as quickly as possible that you're not wasting your time, that the niche is actually going to go somewhere?
Well, I would say that actually kind of goes back to what I talked about. And if there's that irrational passion or urgent pain, and you're seeing that there's this, solution that people are looking for, and you have a way either to fill that, solve that solution for them, or you have a different way than some of the other people that are doing it that can, get them to that solution fastest. So that's just one of the ways that I definitely look at things now when I look at starting something.
Jeremy's got something hidden in there that, as he was saying it, was that the fast way to find out is, are other people already making the kind of money that you're wanting to make in that niche? If they're not, if there aren't people that are truly succeeding, and on the internet it's kind of tricky to find out because everybody is killing it and doing epic stuff. So
they say, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
We're killing it over here.
So it may be a little tricky to find out if they're actually making a decent amount of money. But like just as an example, you go into something like ClickBank and you can see what's selling, which means the person who's created that product is actually making money. Maybe not all the different affiliates involved in that product. They may not be making much money, but the actual guy selling the product is. So that would be one way to just do a quick little sample. But find out if other people are selling. If other people are selling, it's going to be easy for you to come in and make a better product to stand out. That's what I would go for.
I totally agree. And people online for some reason are so shy when it comes to shaking people down. Look, we're business coaches. Try to shake us down. Ask us what's going on. Whenever we get into industry, we're always asking, how much money are these guys making? How are they doing it? What are they providing to their customers? And we start to ask ourselves, we call it like the precedent case analysis. If somebody else can do it, you can find a way to model that behavior and then do what Pat said, is bring your own unique twist, do something iconoclastic or a little bit different in that niche, and you can carve out a piece of that pie or make the pie greater, which is often the case on online marketing for yourself. The other thing that people are really shy about is sell something as soon as possible, especially if you're starting like a new content marketing business or a new blog. Put a product out to that audience as soon as possible and see if they're going to respond to that. We call that buy now blogging. Get started just selling stuff. We do that with all of our products. We're selling it as fast as possible. Whoa. Tearing down a building over here.
Hey, Dan, you've got, can you link to, when the show goes out, can you link to a podcast that you did? It was about a year ago where you went into like the things you don't do in doing some market research on some competitors. Yeah, it was like 5 or 9 things that you guys said,
Yeah, Tim. I remember that, and one of the dirty tricks from that was we call our competition. So this is something we always do before we're planning on getting into a market, is we'll give our competition a call and see how they're doing.
We just got a how long, maybe 1,000-word report from our employees in San Diego who went through the process of being a customer with one of our major competitors, and they laid out like, well, they seem like, this is where they're really inefficient. It doesn't seem like they know anything about this, blah, 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 blah. And so now we're thinking about how we're going to position our brand relative to that experience of being customers of our competitors. Sharky, I know. Sharky.
Well, no, that's a great idea. I mean, Michael Masterson talks about that in Ready, Fire, Aim. I mean, you've got that, you've got all the information. Call him up and say, look, I'm a student of this industry trying to figure out, and you are, right? And why not? Absolutely. I think that's a great idea. And yeah, so get to that first sale as quickly as possible, because at that point, that's when everything changes. We just made a video about this actually recently. We call it the money milestone. If you can get to that first sale, also, not only will your mindset change and your motivation and your overwhelm will change, but then you've proved to yourself you've chosen a niche that you can get people to buy in. So the whole focus early on should be just, whether it's throwing up a blog and then getting somebody else's product as an affiliate or whatever, like figure out how to sell something as quickly as possible and just prove to yourself that you've got a niche that you can make money in. All right, let's see here. Next question. Okay, no, actually, let's get to somebody else that might be able to. Okay, here's a question about, it has to do with when you're surveying people. Earlier we talked about surveying a market. What if you survey the market and it shows, half the market or half the audience, thinks one thing's really important, and then you got a bunch of the market that thinks something else is important? Which side of that market do you help out? Which direction do you go? Which product do you make?
I want to jump in because I'll let others actually answer that question. But one of the things that comes up, I get asked this a lot about testing things, and it really comes down to your sample size. If you surveyed and you get 2 surveys back and it was split 50-50,
Yeah.
You don't know anything. You need a large enough sample size to actually get a feel for what your market wants. And that's...
And how big would you say that is, Tim? What's a big enough sample size, do you think, in your experience?
In a lot of cases, minimally for, say, smaller decisions, about 1,000 people. to be able to find out if you've got something that is statistically relevant, and then in reality it's probably going to run closer to 5,000 or so, which is not very helpful, right, for somebody just getting started, because you don't have those people. So you have to find other ways of actually getting real market data instead of just making guesses off of, say, 25 responses from your list of, say, 300 people. You really need to get real data.
With you 100% there, Tim.
What's that?
Oh, so I was agreeing with you, Tim, on the real data point, and I think another flaw that comes up in some of these studies or findings is asking people their opinion without asking for their money. People generally have a very different opinion when you ask just for their opinion versus asking them to buy your product.
Speaking of asking for opinions, we did something that could be useful for marketers. It's a tactic that we sort of did unwittingly. We surveyed our audience. We asked them, like, basically, here's the product. It was the product that we're doing right now, the Tropical MBA. We said, which date would you like us to throw it? And so we basically, and you could incorporate this into a lot of different things, but we let them sort of help us to evolve the product. And so that first weekend, 80 people listened to the podcast and came to our website and said which date that they would like it to be. And then 25 people off of that people of 80 lists bought a $2,000 product. So I don't know if there's correlation there, but I think it's an interesting idea that you would survey your audience to help them define, like Jeremy was saying, and then they have sort of an ownership in the product. And then also you've got a momentum, which is that I'm already participating here, and there's some momentum, and then I just got to do the next thing, which is, become a part of the product. So that's one thing that worked for us in terms of surveying, and I think, it could apply in some of your situations out there.
Okay, I'm going to give a slightly different perspective. I mean, to one degree, I agree with what Tim was just saying. The more data you have, the better, and you absolutely have to make decisions off of data as much as you possibly can in your business. Now, I completely realize we've got a lot of beginners on this call who don't have access to getting 5,000 data points or even 1,000 data points, and maybe not even 100 data points. And so I will throw out the fact that we do quite a bit of surveying, and we have over the several years of doing our business. And while I enjoy having as many data points as I possibly can, and I recognize, as I think Dan was just saying, in the end, or maybe it was Ian was saying, in the end, it's when they vote for their wallet that you really have something significant, because they'll say one thing and then they could pay otherwise. But if you're just starting out and you haven't got anybody to buy yet, and you just got to make the best case guess that you can. I love the idea of, look at your competitors, even go through their process, survey the people that you do have, even if it is only 300 people. And I'll throw out this little piece of hope. In my experience with our list, when we did our first product, we only had maybe 3,000 people to survey and probably got like 100 responses at the time. And in my experience, by the time, at least with our list, when we've gotten to 50 responses, typically the statistics don't change after that point. Meaning by the time we've gotten 50 responses, we actually can look at the data. And even if we get to 200, the relative percentages are going to stay the same. And that's not always going to be the case, but I do want to throw that out for a bit of hope for people who have smaller lists to ask. I agree, you got to get as many data points as you can, and the best data points are sales, but that is my experience with surveying.
Well, one other thing I was just going to mention about that is, out of all the surveying we've done, it's a lot. We generally now add a survey before every launch as even part of the launch process, because of course, if you ask somebody a question and they give you those answers, that's just one more kind of like excitement. Yes, they're now sort of part of it, and I think our list now, people that have been there for a while understand that when we have a survey come out, something cool's coming, and they want to be a part of it, and they're following that process. But the other thing I just wanted to say was that in all the surveys we've had, I remember maybe one time when it was close to 50-50. It's not at least I guess for us, it hasn't been a normal process to see it be 48-52 or something, and we're like, oh man, it's barely any difference. It's usually pretty 162% or something at the very least. And then you could even survey again to, I guess you could call it, dig down deeper on, the two things that are getting, the 50%.
One of the things brought up there is that using surveys, when you do get a response, a lot of those people end up buying. And a lot of that, I believe, is the engagement level. is that once you get people engaging into something, they're most likely to buy. You may not end up with real data, like real knowledge about something, but you may have your audience become really engaged in the creation of this product that it ends up selling very well.
Yeah, it's worked that way for us.
I would also like to make sure.
What we saw, yeah, and that's really cool. And also, maybe part of the reason you guys are not always splitting 50-50 is that you're asking really good questions. That's probably a good place to make sure that I get a lot of surveys sent to me and I'm just like, I don't know what this person's going to learn from this. You know what I mean? So it's a good place to sort of get a gut check from your fellow internet marketer and ensure that you're asking the right kinds of questions that are going to be meaningful.
How do you survey and find out if you don't have a list at all? Are there ways to collect data?
Do you have some cash? Because if you've got enough capital and you're entering into a marketplace, you can actually hire a company that does exactly that, where they will go in and determine by surveying your demographic to find out how likely they are to buy a particular product or their interest levels or their engagement levels. This is something that you can do, but a lot of people, that's advice that I've never heard anyone ever give to someone entering into a niche, but it's something that's very common for companies that are going to dive into a bigger marketplace.
Yeah, on the money side, I mean, one of the things that I did on a market that I went into was I actually ran Google AdWords to a survey, and you could probably do the same thing with Facebook, being really targeted to try and find the general area on the paid side for relatively cheap. Now, you're not going to get obviously the same data as Tim's talking about, but one of the other things I've seen is if your market has a forum, being able to have people there, sending them to a survey. I've seen that work before. On obviously, the freer, the harder it is usually, in terms of it's generally free to go to a forum and ask people. Whereas obviously, what Tim said. Tim, do you even know some general prices for that? I mean, I know some, but they're really expensive.
Yeah,
but
they are.
Yeah.
So we'll skip that.
I can give some alternative advice. If you're at the point where you don't have a list and you're running around forums and stuff, you really ought to consider the possibility of actually meeting some of your target market in real person or getting them on the telephone. This is going to be way more effective than going to a random place on the internet and paying people to answer questions. I mean, you got to understand who these people are, and if you're at square one, that's the square one step, is to sit down with your target market and to figure out what really makes them tick. And I think especially in the online space and in the tech startup space, this is the most undervalued thing, and I think that's what's going to make you. If you look around at this phone call, we intimately know our markets. We've met hundreds of people, hundreds of our students, hundreds of our fellow entrepreneurs. That's the knowledge that's translating, helping us to inform all of our judgments. So, if you don't know these people, you got to get them on the horn. That's the bottom line. And then that's going to help to define how you take the next steps and start to build that list.
Yeah, I've definitely, done the whole meetup.com thing. And anytime I go meet my market, even now I still learn something. We've seen kind of our market shift. Some things, some different ideas that used to be really popular, now things have shifted because economy shifts. And when you actually, when I would go to these internet marketing groups, whether in Salt Lake or even in San Diego, it's just interesting to hear that person live and, see what their issues are directly. It's definitely eye-opening.
All right, our final question here. Somebody here has a niche that they're very interested in, they're very passionate about, but it's a very popular niche. And so they're wondering, should I still pursue it? They don't say what the niche is, but let's say it's something like dating or weight loss, or should they still pursue that niche?
Well, it's funny because if Steve from Nerd Fitness had have asked us, hey, should I go in the fitness market? I would have probably first face-palmed it, going, oh my gosh, that's a massive market. But he found the right angle to go at it and does incredibly well now. So it's funny because I definitely come from kind of the inspiration side of things, and go, if you can find that right angle that other people aren't doing, and just hit the market with that, I definitely, if you've got that passion behind it, am all for that.
The capital A, like that's what we're coming at. If you have a fitness, here's the thing that I think people find really difficult at the beginning is telling people to take a hike and go away. If you're not telling 95% of the visitors to your website that this website's not for you, your website's not for anybody, especially if you're in something like the dating niche. So it's like, if you're not a single male world traveler, looking to hook up every single night of the week, please leave. There's plenty of other sites for you. If you're not a Christian woman looking to blah, blah, you see what I'm saying? Like, you really have to identify who your site's for and who it's not for in the beginning if you're getting into competitive niche. Sorry, buddy, did I?
No,
I'll just keep talking, guys.
And asking that question of 6 people who actually jumped into the most competitive industry on the internet.
Yeah, no doubt.
Whether or not you should do something that's in a competitive market.
What?
Here. Pot kettle black. Go do dog training. Do dog training.
There's something to also be said for the hunger. Like, I never underestimate the underdog, and I'm not sure exactly how to quantify that, but our buddy here with Nerd Fitness, man, he just must have had a hunger that we could only imagine, to propel him to
Actually,
success.
It's worth listening to his interview on the Rise to the Top podcast. I mean, his story is amazing, and Steve Cam worked his tail off, and it was a very long time for him to prove that concept. So I think go listen to that interview. We'll try to link you up to that at the Rise to the Top show. And he was working his tail off, just like I know every single person on this call was working their tail off too. So hunger, that's
with
that's
the big
big
markets,
deal.
I would say, one of the things that when I started, there was no such thing as failure because I knew I wouldn't quit. I was going to make this work. I didn't know if internet business in general would work, but I don't know what it was. I just was not going to quit. So if you're going for a big market, you've got to think of it, I think, that way. I also had this saying that my grandma told me when I was really young, and she was like, this whole world-class traveler, was a politician, all this different things. And one of the things she told me was, if anybody else has done it, you can do it. And if nobody's done it, you can be the first. And as cliche, whatever as that is, when I'm 14 or something, I've remembered that the whole time. So, when I saw somebody talking about, I've done this with internet business, I just was like going, look, if he really has, I can totally do it. If he hasn't, I will be the one to prove it, only because of that mindset. But I think you have to have a really strong mindset like that to go after one of the big markets, just like they were saying about Steve and all of us trying to go after this crazy internet business market.
If you're trying to get into a big market and you see all this huge competition out there, I think you're actually you have a huge advantage, because you're coming in at a point after everyone else has, where you can see what's working and what's not working, and you can tailor your business to address all of that, to have the things that do work and make it better, and not include the things that didn't work for those other people. So you have actually a huge advantage. You just got to work for it and hustle and be hungry.
I think those are excellent words to end on. Hustle, be hungry, go for it.
Appropriate for the LBP. Thanks, guys. We're on brand message here.
Right.
Yeah, buddy.
Well, since this is for your podcast, Dan and Ian, what are the final words you want to leave us with?
Well, I mean, it's been an honor that all you guys would come over to our neck of the woods. I'm huge fans of all of you guys, so it's been awesome.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having us on this series, and I'm glad we could wrap up with the traditional LBP chainsaws in the background, hammering, sweeping in Asia. This is good.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for listening to the LBP, and especially thank you for everybody who joined us on the live call and for helping to make the Summer Marketing Mashup a success. Special thanks to the guys at Internet Business Mastery for being the original gangsters and for setting this whole thing up together. You guys have inspired tens of thousands, I'm sure. It could be hundreds of thousands of entrepreneurs to get started. But thank you for inspiring this event.
Thank you.
All right, guys. So for all the listeners on the podcast feed, we'll see you guys next Thursday.
Booyah.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening. Don't be shy. We've got a mailing list, lifestylebusinesspodcast.com. Go there, get yourself signed up, and we'll keep you up to date on everything. Man, I should be a rapper or something.
I don't think you have the skills.
Let's get moving on. But that's what I want to do.